Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Gooler Loeb.
Hey everyone, I am delighted to introduce today's guest, Heather Hansen O'Neill. Heather is an international keynote speaker, behavioral expert, 4 times author, and adventurer. She is also a 2-time TEDx speaker, host of the popular podcast From Fear to Fire, and the Humanity of Sales radio show. Heather wrote the book Finding Humanity on the intersection of humanity and business, and her signature model, Elements of Adventure. It's a powerful framework she utilizes to empower leaders, ignite results, and change the world, one adventure at a time. Whoa. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you, Tammy. It's such a pleasure to be on your show today. I appreciate it.
Delighted to have you. So, Heather, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to begin at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your formative years and how they may or may not have informed where you are today.
Oh my goodness, how could they not? Of course, when I look back, I can definitely attribute where I am today to several different key points or decisions or people. My first career was that of a professional dancer. My mom wanted me to dance because I was such a klutz. I would fall everywhere. And at 4, my mom wanted me to dance, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. 5, she wanted me to dance. No, I don't want to do that. Finally, I'm 9 years old, and she asks me again. And I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll try it this time. Maybe it was one bruise too many from falling up the stairs again. And she takes me to this class where the instructor had what I can only describe as puppy dog ears, because she had 2 really big side ponytails. And everything was a game. And we left, and my mom said, what do you think? Do you want to go back to dance again? And I'm like, I definitely want to dance again, but I want to get serious about this. And I can't be a dancer if listening to someone who has puppy dog ears on her head. Can you find me someone more serious? So this kind of sums up me and who I am. I don't listen to other people that well, but when I finally make a decision to do something, I want to dive into it full force. And she did find me a very strict Joffrey dancer who was amazing. I loved her so much. She absolutely made me the dancer that I became.
So you started fairly young dancing, and to the point where you became a professional dancer.
Yes. By the time I was 13, I was a professional dancer. They would take me out of my school and pay me to go dance with this troupe at other schools and then other performances. And it was such an amazing lifestyle. I went half a day to performing arts school throughout high school, and it was an incredible experience, like living that passion, living that joy, that thing that I absolutely breathed in. It was so me. Maybe I didn't have some of the traditional things. I didn't go to the parties or the movies. I wasn't involved in school sports, so I may have missed out on some of those things, but I wouldn't have traded it for anything. It was an amazing life.
It doesn't sound like you missed it from what you're saying. What kind of dance did you do?
So obviously, if my main teacher was from Joffrey, it was very classically trained. So I was trained in ballet, but what I performed in most was jazz and modern. That's where I excelled, that expression. And so that was my love. I loved being able to have the classes in ballet, but then to be able to emote. That actually leads into what I do today.
True. So you started at 13 as a pro. I'm just in awe of how it sounds like you embraced it, because I think I've probably heard more stories of people at that developmental age feeling maybe more conflicted, let's say, between wanting to do something like that, but also feeling pulled between that and the social life at school or other things, or 13 is such a confusing age
Ugh.
anyway, right?
Oh, yeah, I was definitely confused. But dance was my North Star. Dance
Ah,
was my
yeah.
safe place. I felt good there. No matter what went on, where maybe I got into a fight with a friend, or maybe a guy didn't like me, or maybe I didn't get an A on a test. Dance was always my thing that I could come back
Ah,
to and feel at home with.
wow.
I did love that.
Take us forward from 13. I've only known you as a coach, so I'm curious how that developed from 13 onward.
I made some choices that people questioned. So I'll share with you that part because that was
Mm.
interesting. I was actually offered 4 full scholarships to different universities. I got half academic and half dance scholarships at places like NYU, Point Park, Philadelphia, North Carolina. And I actually didn't take any of them.
Whoa.
I also got invited to do a dance tour at the same time. And I felt just at my core that dance is a short-lived career and that I wanted to pursue it while I had the capacity to do. And I'll tell you, that might have been some planted seed that me being intuitive, I don't know. You'll find out why I say that momentarily.
Yeah.
But everyone said, "Are you crazy? How could you give up these amazing scholarships? These are incredible universities. You're insane. You're never going to go to school. You're never going to do this, blah, blah, blah." And I just had this conviction that this is what I needed to do. And also, I don't know where it came from, but a bit of confidence that I would still get a degree. I would just make that happen at some other point in my life.
Yeah.
And so I did it. And I lived my best life for a while. I was touring. I lived in Manhattan. I was in some great companies. It was amazing. And then when I was almost 25, I was at the height of my career during a rehearsal for this role of a lifetime, the lead in this program. I did a grand jeté, came down wrong on my ankle, and there was this loud crack and everybody just stopped.
Oh.
I broke several bones in my foot, and the doctor told me that I wouldn't dance again. And I was like, this is all I know, right? This is my life, my passion. And 2 things about that. The first one is that I listened to the doctor for a while, and I just went through what I call my dark years, where I kept getting up in the morning and doing things I needed to do, but I wasn't that joyful self that I was before. I was questioning a lot. I was in a million different jobs. I
Yeah.
waited tables, I bartended, I was a receptionist at a medical office. I got to tell you, I was really bad at that. I don't know why, I was just so bad at it. And I installed phone systems. And then I got into sales, which I found that I had an affinity for. So I was pretty good at sales. I stuck with that until I came to do what I'm doing now. And so it was a crazy ride, but I do want to go back to give a little hope. At some point, I stopped and I said, I don't want to be feeling like I'm feeling right
Sure.
now.
Yeah.
And what if that doctor wasn't right?
Yeah.
What if I actually could dance again, but maybe just do it a little differently?
Mm.
And so those what if questions caused me to go back and take some classes. I will tell you that I'm so grateful to have done that because I dance to this day.
Yeah.
I don't do it for a living anymore, but it's still part of my life. And I feel like I'm not the only one who had given up something that they loved, that passion, that joy that was a part of who they were, and gave them energy. And so I just encourage anyone who is listening right now that if you've lost something that gave you that kind of joy, go back and grab it.
Yeah. You went back to the heart of what it was. Because I can imagine there were people you came across as you were dancing professionally who didn't necessarily like the grind of touring, of performing, of rehearsing, of auditioning. the wear and tear of all of those things on your body, on your psyche. Clearly, you thrived doing that for many years. I can imagine, though, that's not for everyone.
Yeah.
So the love of dance, the love of movement and of connecting with the music and your body and all of that's, in a way, its own experience. Being a professional dancer and being on tour is its own experience. And it sounds like you were able, I'm guessing, to separate those two.
Yeah. Yeah, I was. And I just love it so much. And I did go back to doing, I taught for a while. I did some choreography for a while,
Ah,
but we don't have to make a living at it to have it as part of who we are.
yeah. So when did you come out of that darker place, or when did you realize that I can still be this dancer and still
Well,
love it?
yeah, it's a really good question because it really was that point where I asked the question, what if? Coming from a place of curiosity,
Mm,
what can I learn from this? How can I use this to help others?
mm,
What if that person was wrong? What if I could actually do this? What might it look like? And I live in that place of curiosity as someone who does coaching.
yeah,
And it's all about being curious and asking good
absolutely.
questions, right? Everything that I've done in my life has given me something, and either inspiration for a lesson on what to do or what not to do
Right.
with moving forward, right?
Yeah. So I am curious,
Okay.
was there a moment where a light bulb went on over your head and you just said, what if that person was wrong? Or
Yeah.
was it sort of something that kind of evolved up to a point?
I'm going to say yes because it's yes to both.
Okay.
There was a light bulb moment of that, what if they were wrong? That was definitely the spark
Mm.
that lit that hope. So
Yeah.
the darkness was lit by that light, right?
Yeah.
But then the evolution of it, there were moments along the way. I found out that I loved choreography, and I wouldn't have found that out had I continued dancing. So it would have been a different path.
Yeah.
My first class that I realized I could have given birth to everyone in the class and I didn't care was a freeing moment. Because when you're an adult dancer and you are at a level where you want to take an advanced class,
Right.
you're going to be mostly dancing with people who are getting into the dance field. That made me giggle. I didn't
Yeah.
care. I
Right.
was like, I'm here. I'm claiming my spot.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was a lot of fun.
It just occurred to me, there you are in a dance class with another generation, right?
Mhm.
And yet I'm guessing there are some things about that, probably some of the skills, some of the practices that really hadn't changed that much, that you still have to do some of the same things. Whereas if you were in a different type of class, you might have felt like a complete fish out of water,
Yeah.
right? From a generational perspective. But yet there you were able to show up, and it's not about comparing yourself to them. I don't mean it like that. It's refreshing to think about that there are certain moves that are still the same moves, as opposed
Yeah.
to taking a computer class or something.
That's a really good point. Yes, the moves, the foundational, the science of it was there all along. But one of the things I realized in going back is that maturity gives you wisdom. And so I knew to listen to my body more than I did when I was dancing. I would push my body. My mind was in control of, oh, yeah, you think you're tired. You're going to keep
Yeah.
going. But I learned to honor my body, listen to it, take care of it,
Yeah.
support it, to thank it. And I think that's a really good part of coming into yourself later. I believe that my ability to find the good, to be positive, to be resilient actually came from that worst moment of my life.
Yeah. So it sounds like you really came out ahead in many ways. You did a number of different things. You had a nice variety of experiences of figuring out, what do you like? What don't you like? What works for you? What doesn't? You had lots of opportunities to kind of discover yourself after this really devastating accident. So take us forward from there.
So I did go back to college, but I had to pay for it myself,
Well,
which
yeah,
is fine. A lot of
yeah,
people do, but that was the part I
yeah,
was like, oh, those college scholarships would have been real nice, but it was exactly what I needed to do. I don't
yeah,
regret a moment of it. And I took 15-year plan because I went
yeah.
back for 2 years
Hmm.
and then I started my business and it launched
Ah,
pretty. I'll tell the story of how my business launched quickly. And then I ended up going back and finishing my degree when my kids were little. It's been a very interesting journey. So when I was in sales, I had this idea for how to marry service and sales. And I was golfing with a client and I was telling him about it. And he's, oh, you're a fireball. You should totally do that. And I'm like, they're not quite ready for it. I'm planting seeds. The company's not quite there yet, but I think that they'll come along. And he goes, no, you got to start your own business. I will be your first paying client. And if you do a great job for me, I'll tell everybody. If you don't, I won't tell anybody. And I was
what?
like, that's a mentor, right?
Yeah.
I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. I didn't know you could just start a business because you had an idea.
Wow.
So I'm condensing this quite a lot, but
Yeah.
I took a lot of time
Yeah.
to flesh out this idea that I had so that I could present it to his team. And he kept his word. I did a great job for them. And he went out and he was with a group of CEOs like a Vistage is now. And he went in and he said, Heather's amazing. You all got to use her. And they did. My business went from 0 to 60 because of him. And
Wow.
I was so busy. I've had my business for 27 years. So that was the point where people would throw money at you, right? So that doesn't happen anymore. Just for anyone listening, don't get too excited. You have to work harder for it now. But if I went in and I said what I could do for somebody, they'd go write me a check for $20,000 as a deposit. And that was not a big deal. And that doesn't really happen anymore. The business was rocking and rolling and I was traveling a lot. And I loved that. But my clock started ticking and I'm like, I kind of want to have a family. So I went and got my coaching certification so that I could still keep my clients, but do more virtually and help them to do what I was doing for their teams. And you have to evolve.
Yeah. So I want to make sure we connect a few dots here. So you had been in sales and you had this idea that there could be more of a connection between service and sales. And what kind of industry were you in at the time? I'm curious.
So I was doing advertising sales at the time, and my client was a manufacturer.
Okay.
When I said marry service and sales, I wanted to bring more human connection,
Yeah.
which is where my focus is right
A
now.
little less transactional and more what I often will call a consultative sales style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a program that I do called The Evolution of Sales, showing how sales has really moved from manipulation to
Right.
competition to
Right.
consultative to humanity. And so
Exactly. Yeah.
it is an evolution, just like we
Yeah.
are. And it also involved, because I was working with some larger companies, it's also breaking down the walls of siloed organizations.
Yes.
And we work together and serve each other as internal
Mhm.
clients so
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
we can better serve the external customers.
Yes. You're preaching to the choir here.
I know you get it. You get
Yeah,
it.
no, absolutely. So you were working with a number of companies on building their own internal capacity to do these things?
Yes. I was working a lot with the frontline people.
Mhm.
Then I moved into working with more managerial, more leadership roles. I worked with call center folks.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different parts. And you can do a lot in 27 years. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of different elements of it that I learned along the way. And I worked with great people. So I think that curiosity, saying, what is it that you want to accomplish?
Yeah.
And then helping them to design it is one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
Not just to give someone, there are models, there are foundational principles,
Yeah.
but then what does that mean for you? What does that mean for
Right.
your team? How might it differ? So what I do, I say, is always about human to human connection. And
Right.
so it translates across. I did a lot in manufacturing, a lot in financial services, a lot of
Hmm.
tech and all that stuff, but it's any company that has people.
Right. Because there's a difference between how you go about working in a manufacturing environment and a
Right.
financial services environment.
Right. Oh, yeah, it's
And
totally
yet,
different.
there is that point where I always say to people, we all put our pants on one leg at a time.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
but then when you get into sort of the nuances of each industry, you start to learn there are just certain norms or nuances that are helpful to tune into. But your
Mm-hmm.
clients can teach you those things too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
And actually, the way you just said that was really awesome. Your clients can teach you things every day. I learn from my clients. And one of the things, when I went back and I did the coaching and then I was coaching some of the C-suite people, I
Yeah.
pattern, found a
Mm.
pattern of discontent. And that's what led to my first book.
Ah.
And because so many of my clients would start out, oh, I need to help motivate the team, or we really need to get the membership aligned with our purpose, or whatever it is. They started out with some business related challenge. And
Mm-hmm.
then they'd build trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would always come down to, oh, you know what, Heather, I got to tell you, I don't even like what I do. I'm like, what? And so I
Oh.
would hear people tell me these stories of, I never wanted to take over the family business. I wanted to do this other thing, or I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was in college and my roommate said he was doing this, so I'm going to do it too. Or, hey, my best friend said this and she's really gets me, so I did that. And
Yeah.
so many people are doing things that they don't really love doing.
Yeah.
You must see
I
this
know.
over and over again.
Everything you're saying rings 100% truth
Yeah.
to me. Unfortunately, and fortunately, there are people like you and like me who really want to help people find their way to something that is more satisfying and meaningful. Sometimes it means making a complete change, but sometimes they can find their way through the situation they're in to get more satisfaction. They're just frustrated with the dynamics they're in.
Yes. I think that there's so much noise today. There's so much distraction. There's heaviness that we don't take the time to listen to our hurts. We're
Mm-hmm.
listening to all the noise and just
Mm-hmm.
trying to make it through the day. And
Yeah.
so when I say, like, turn down the volume on that noise and turn up the volume on your heart and take that quiet time to listen to who you are, what you want, to honor that space. If you give it enough time, it'll come up for you what you may need to bring in to your current position, or what nudge of an entrepreneurial idea you may have, or where you might want to go on the ladder or a new industry or whatever it might be. It will come.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think a lot of people don't know how to allow themselves to let that happen,
Yeah.
lift them out of the tunnel that they're in. And it's not because they're not capable of doing it. It's not about that they need someone to rescue them necessarily. It's just they really need somebody either to hold up the mirror or just open the door so they can see another way.
Yeah, we're too close to it.
Yeah,
We all need that
we
external
do.
perspective. The
Mhm.
best coaches have coaches.
Absolutely.
It's not that one necessarily knows so much more than the other person. It's
Right.
just getting a new perspective that allows you to shine a light on something important that you were too close to see.
Exactly. Now, I want to go back to you talking about your first book
Mm,
because I think it's not everyone who wants to help people then decides to write a book because writing a book is a huge commitment.
it is. Yes.
And so tell us about your first book. I'd like to hear about your other books as well, but I want you to walk us through some of that work that you've done because I think it's another great way to help people and reach people and a great way to have something out there that can carry forward a lot of the messages, because you can only reach so many people one-on-one, right?
It's true. And there's a lot of people out there who have a book in them.
Mm.
There's not a lot of people who write the book,
Mm-hmm.
and they could, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so here's my story for that. I'm a vision board person. So I would, every New Year's Eve, I would do a vision board with my sons. And so it was so much fun. It was a great bonding experience. And I had put published author on my vision board for 3 years in a row before I realized, oh, wait, that's not happening. Why is that not happening? Because I wasn't activating it. And so that third year, I'm like, I'm going to add it. This is the last time. I'm going to add it. And if nothing happens, whatever. And I guess it was like 2 months later, I sat next to an author at a baseball game. And I'm not the shyest person on earth. And so I turned, oh, you're an author. That's great. I want to be an author. And he's, yeah, you and everybody else. He was such a curmudgeon. But that didn't sway me. I was asking him all these questions. I was, so what's your big advice? And he said, my big advice is to just start, just do it. So you all talk about wanting to be an author, but nobody ever does anything about it. Maybe you want to try writing something. Maybe you want to try. Yeah, I'm like, okay, I got you. Thank you. And so I went home from that baseball game and I thought, well, maybe this guy has something. And so I sent an email to a gentleman I had met at a conference 6 years earlier. I'm sure you're not going to remember me, but you had some really good thoughts about publishing. And I think you have a PR firm. Would you mind if I ran my ideas for a book by you at some point? That was like at 11:30. At 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes later, I get an email back from him saying, oh, I'm so glad you reached out. Yes, of course I remember you. We had such a great time during that conference. And oh, by the way, I now own a publishing company. Could you send me a query letter? Now, okay, this is where I was. I had to look up what query letter was because I had no idea. So I'm like, okay, quick. Oh, no, okay, yeah, sure I will. Give me 2 days. So I figured out what a query letter was. I fleshed out my idea for the book, which was really purely an idea. I had nothing written. And I sent this query letter off and they accepted it. And he gave me 120 days as my deadline. And I had 3 children.
120 days?
Yes. He goes, you know what? This is going to be really good. There was something going on marketing wise in the fall. And so he wanted me to finish it in time for this thing. And okay, truth be told, I may not have mentioned to him how little of it I had written. So he may have thought I was further along the process than I was. But yeah, now the cat's out of the bag that it's being put out there on this podcast. So I did it. So my kids were little and I was writing and they were throwing those little Nerf balls at my head to get my attention. Yeah. It was crazy. It was crazy, but I did it. And I wrote the book and that was my first book. And it was called Find Your Fire at 40, The Age of Discontent.
I love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was fun. It was fun.
It was fun. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. But everybody has their own journey. But I liked the curmudgeon's advice to just take some action. Who knows what'll happen?
I love those moments. I call those, I don't think I'm the one who called it this, but I remember reading an article somewhere about calling those defining moments where something happens or you have an interaction with somebody and they just say something to you in a certain way and it just almost turns a switch on in you, right? And you've been thinking about this thing for years and this one person, a little obnoxious, says one thing to you and then you go and you do it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So did your other books kind of come around that way too? Did you go back to baseball games or were there?
No, once you knew you could do it, the first one's, it's like giving birth, right? And so it does get easier. The second one, which is not my most well-written book, but it was the easiest one because I took it from my journals.
Oh.
It was just more the ABCs of something. So it wasn't real in depth. But then my third book was such a joy because it's the only one that I co-authored with an
Oh,
amazing man named Will Lewis. That was Where's the Office during the pandemic.
oh,
Love
wow.
that book. That's a great book. And then my most recent one is Finding Humanity, which I wrote last year.
Wow.
It was published last year. I wrote it the year before.
No, I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
And I assume all these books are available wherever books are
Yes,
sold. So those
correct.
will all be in the show notes.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And tell us more. So
Oh,
take us
goodness.
forward. So you are still working with lots of different businesses. You're
Mhm.
coaching executives. You're speaking. I know you've done 2 TEDx talks.
Yes.
Tell us about those. How did those come about?
Once again, people are probably going to be like, you are blessed. I am, but it's putting yourself in the right place,
That's right.
but then opportunities present themselves.
That's right.
So I went to an event in New York City and I've been speaking. I do coaching, but my focus is actually more on speaking. And so that was about the time that I was really hitting my stride with speaking.
Okay.
And so it was fun to go to this event that I was invited to as a participant because I'd been doing so much from the stage. I hadn't been to enough conferences, right? So I just went, I want to absorb, I want to learn something here. I'm at the conference. And so the person who had invited me is talking to someone. And so I just go over and I'm like, oh, hi, I just wanted to say hello. And he goes, oh, you should know her. And he said, this woman, Sarah, was doing a TEDx in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she had space for one more speaker. And he says, Heather should be that last speaker. And I'm like, I would love to. And she said, you're in, literally. That's how I got my first TEDx. And then the second one was harder. But can you imagine?
Anyone who's listening to this who's tried to get a TEDx, if they heard that, they might hate you now.
I know, but I want to just go back to, I knew this person. It's who you know.
Yeah.
I showed up. I went to the networking event. He trusted me. He knew me as a speaker. She trusted him.
Well, I understand that. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But I also know people who've known people and they still really have to pound.
Yeah, I
the
was
pavement.
lucky. I was very lucky.
But let's be clear here. Yes, you were lucky. And how I always, whenever I hear someone say I was lucky, is how does luck work?
Right.
You have to show up.
Right.
And you show up with people who know you, trust you, respect you, like you. And I don't mean like you, like just like you, but they really appreciate what you're bringing to the world.
Mhm.
There are all kinds of things that you've done up till that point when you show up that you've put a lot into it when you show up. So it's not, oh, this was handed to you on a silver platter and easy peasy. If you really look at what it took till you showed up there, right? That's what luck is.
It is. You're right. Luck is being prepared,
it-
doing the work.
Yeah. I mean, you just don't know when luck will show up,
That's right.
but it will if you continue to put yourself in the places where you'd like to be. It's not just about putting yourself out there and thinking, maybe it'll show up here, maybe it'll show up there. I'll just keep showing up some places. Show up where you want to show up.
Yeah, where your people are too.
But it's not like you didn't have anything to do with that.
No. And then I had to do a decent job of it. So yeah.
And so what was that talk about?
So that was about letting go. And that was a really fun one to work through. I think we teach what we most need to learn. Right. And so I, as a recovering control freak, I really need to relearn the lesson of letting go often. And so I shared the process that really worked well for me.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. We'll put that in the show notes too.
Awesome.
And then when did you do the next TEDx?
So the last TEDx was during COVID, and I loved my topic. It was really important to me, but the tech side of it during COVID, it got really weird because people couldn't, it wasn't the best
I know a number of people who feel
Yeah.
that way about their TEDx.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll have to just find and work toward getting a third one to
Ah!
bring it all home, right?
So are you saying that the second one technically
Oh,
is
it's out there. It's out there.
you're just not as happy with it,
I'm just
or
not as happy with it. Yeah.
but you like the topic?
I love the topic. I'm passionate about the
What's
topic.
the topic?
It takes it the other level. It's the science of beliefs
Ah,
and
okay.
how our beliefs guide us
Mhm.
and where they come from and how to release the ones that don't serve us.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Wow. What a robust career and what a robust body of work that you've put together. Is there anything that we haven't touched on here that you want to make sure the listeners know about?
I do have a thought that I learned from dancing that I might want to send people off with, but I think you in your show. I know you kind of want to jump ahead.
Okay, so let's hold for a moment because I
Okay.
want people to know how they can reach you,
Okay, sure.
right? So what's the best way for people to find out more about you and your work or reach you?
Thank you. So Heather Hansen O'Neill. It's so easy. So heatherhanseno'neill.com. Put in Heather Hansen O'Neill anywhere on social media. You'll find me.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Tammy will put it in the show notes because my big thing is people misspell my name. So I'm not
Okay.
going to worry you with how to spell it here.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you'll be able to find it in the show notes.
Yes. And everything else.
Yeah. Thank you.
And as the final question that I like to ask is, a lot of people listening are thinking about what's next for them, trying to think about how to go about that and what's going to work for them. What would be a key piece of advice that you would give someone who's thinking about their next move?
So I would say don't get discouraged. It is a different world right now, and it requires a different level of persistence
Mm-hmm.
and resilience. And when I said that, thinking back to my dance career, auditioning is much like job hunting right now. And the biggest thing, there are actually, so if you're not familiar with the dance world, there are things called cattle calls. And it's just like 2,000 dancers show up at the Winter Garden and stand on a stage 20 at a time. And they're like, you stay, everybody else leave. It's terrible. And then you dance and then you leave and you dance and you leave and then you got to sing and you leave. So you're cut because they have one role left in Cats, right? Or whatever it might be. And so it can be incredibly discouraging. So I had worked with one of the choreographers who was doing this particular show audition previously when I was dancing with the Princeton Ballet. And he came over to me. He was kind. He came over to me because he saw I was about to cry because I'd been there for 6 hours and then got cut. And he comes over and he goes, Heather, keep coming because sometimes you just don't fit into the costume. And I was like, what do you mean? And I thought about it. And we don't know why people choose us. We don't know why they decide not to take us. We may want a role more than we think we want anything in the world. And the reality is not getting that role could be the absolute best thing that's ever happened because the real perfect role for you is right around the corner and you wouldn't have had the opportunity if you had gotten the one you thought you wanted. So just keep coming.
Oh, I love that. I appreciate that so much, Heather. And I appreciate you being here and
Thank you.
not only sharing your story so generously, but the spirit in which you've gone about your career. I am really excited for people to hear this. And thank you so much for being here today.
And Tammy, thank you for doing what you do and being such a gift for others.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of my interview with Heather Hansen O'Neill. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 297. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. Did you know that ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts can help this podcast reach more people? Please help me to inspire more people to move their careers in meaningful directions by clicking on the Apple Podcasts button. Leave an honest rating and brief review. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.